Okay, Mayor and councilors, we're back after our quick lunch. And so we're going to go ahead and get back to the agenda. We have the police department presenting. I did want to just start with how many authorized positions you have. However, to clarify, there's sworn, which is, how many sworn do you have?
We currently have an FTE for sworn police officers of 61.
No, 62 actually.
62 with the deputy chief position, which is unfilled at this.
No.
Well, how many vacancies do you have now?
7.
Yeah, that's just, and they're all in officer, all in
All
officers.
in that, yeah. We have 8 PSOs.
Right,
We do not have any vacancies. We're all full.
which is
regard to
great.
PSOs.
Oh, great.
And we have 8 civilian personnel.
Right,
I believe we have 1 vacancy, which is our evidence tech. Technically a secretary, but we assigned her to the evidence division. Previously, we used to have a certified police officer occupying that position, but we filled it with a trained civilian to get that officer out in the street, at least that officer position.
okay, so appreciate that. So 62 sworn, 8 PSOs, which are completely filled, which is just, and maybe some of those will want to be police officers someday.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, and then 8 in your civilian force. Okay, so please go ahead and just kind of go through the highlights of your budget.
Council, I'm just going to cover real quick before I turn it over to Christy, who has some more details about the other budget issues, items, should I say. So I want to cover really quick some of the grant funding that we've received or will be receiving. In addition to our regular budget, the first one is our DWI grant from Safer New Mexico. In total, we should be getting about $82,300 from that grant. Our law enforcement protection fund, we should be receiving about $48,500. And thanks to Karen Mitchell, we will be getting about $38,000 for our K9 program. We intend to get 2 more K9s, which will be brand new K9s. We'll be retiring 2 K9s on top of that, and they'll also cover their training, certified.
How many K9 do you have?
Well, currently we have 2. We'll be retiring 2, so in total we'll have 2. I believe the turnaround time should be about 3 months before we get them K9s. Generally, you usually have 4. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Christy so she can highlight some of our budget issues.
Hello, everybody. What account are you wanting to start at? For our overtime sworn, we're staying flat as last year. And I don't have, do you have any questions about that? No? And for the civilian building account, we, page 55.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the only change that we added was for overtime on civilians was $7,500 because of the amount of tasks that each civilian has to handle for the whole 61 sworn staff. So we've dwindled down from, we used to have about 15, now we're down to 8. So everybody's critical in what they do in the department. You have any questions on that?
When you're saying overtime on civilian, I'm confused what that means. That's,
I'm sorry?
that's non-certified officers.
Right, those are civilian staff, secretaries, the admin staff and such. Evidence tech, that's who we have as staff members and civilians. Any further questions?
And protective custody, I think is next. That's the PSOs and that's on
It's
57.
57. We're a flat budget for the PSOs, overtime, and the fuel purchases. Any questions for that?
I just wanted to make a comment that back in the day, the liquor excise tax funds used to pay for the PSOs. And I think we actually had 9 a while, and when I got here, and then we cut it to 7 just because of budget cuts during the really lean days. And then we were fortunate to get the Preventing Alcohol-Related Deaths grant from the federal government, and we actually used that to fund 1 position. So now we're back to 8, but 7 are funded by the city funds, and then the 1 is funded by the federal government PARD grant, which we hope will continue. But as I say, we used to fund this with liquor excise tax when it was about 300 a while back, and now because of the cuts in liquor excise tax, we have absorbed that into our general fund budget. But it's a very important function. There is no
So when
question
you're
about
talking
that.
about cuts. Sorry, see, you're talking about cuts in liquor excise tax. Are there less people drinking, do you think?
Actually, and interestingly enough, though, the revenue has come down. Chief, I'm trying to remember when I first got here almost 8 years ago. I think it was by between 1.4 and 1.6 million a year. And interestingly enough, when it went up to 6% from 5%, the idea was it would be increased, but it didn't increase. And I don't know whether that was just displacement of people went someplace else to buy, or whether there was less demand. I'm really not sure, but it went down to between 1.2 and 1.3. So it was reduced in terms of the revenue. And the county, of course, has wanted to start funding some of the programs at their jail. So they wanted more of the money. So there's just been those issues. But when the revenues went down, that's the first thing we took out. We absorbed the PSO program, and then we just asked to fund the detox contract.
Okay, thank you. Will the liquor excise tax come back again and fund this at any point, do you think?
Well, the revenues, at least Patty, from what we looked at from the presentation, are about
1.2.
Yeah, they're pretty. They went down from a high of close to 1.6 down to 1.2, and they seem to be staying between 1.2 and 1.3. So who knows if they're going to go back up? I mean, you don't wish them to, because that means more people are buying alcohol. But if they're buying it outside of the city, then of course outside of the county, then that's an issue. So it's really hard to say. But in terms of the demand, we are going to get the money we need to fund the NCI contract this year. And according to the county, we'll have another meeting and we'll probably get it for next year. But then we're really going to have to figure out what to do. We are going to do an RFP. We're getting off into Deborah's budget, but I just wanted to point out that the city absorbed this cost into our general fund.
I have a question for you, Chief. I'm just curious, and I'm sorry, this might be, tell me if I need to have a different conversation at a separate time, but how long have the 7 positions been open for in terms of, because I know you guys have been challenged in trying to get those positions filled, is that correct?
So that could be
Sorry.
We've had about a running average of about 5 officer vacancies over the last, as long as I've been chief, for 3 years, but I know it's been longer than that. It varied between 7 and 9 in years previous to that.
So my question for you is, would it be a possibility, and I know this probably would take more action on council possibly, but to utilize the PSOs, and I believe they do this in Albuquerque, where they utilize the PSOs for more than what they're doing currently, and they utilize them for writing reports on cases that are like nonviolent, so they're non-certified, so they wouldn't need their gun. But if someone's broken into someone's car and they need to just come and take a report, that doesn't really need to be a certified officer. So then at that point, they're utilized for more. Maybe we pay them a little bit more for that extra training, and that frees up the certified officers for crimes where they really have to be present. Is that something we've looked at?
We did that in the past. We cut down on their functions in regard to taking accident reports, things of that nature, because sometimes it calls for them to write citations in regard to the criminal code, which they're not qualified to do. So they really cut down on the responsibilities and what we can use them for. But to be honest, if we did utilize them for anything else, they're just too busy answering calls for service in regard to picking up intoxicated people, even entertain other functions. But we do use them for traffic control, towing vehicles, things of that nature.
Okay. Yeah, because I spoke with some of your sergeants and they were mentioning like, kind of liking that idea because it sounded like, potentially that some of the PSOs were just happy being PSOs. They didn't necessarily want to get their additional certification to become officers, which is fine. But then I was just thinking if we're having trouble filling the certified officers, maybe we increase the PSOs and utilize them for more, because then we could free up some of the certified officers' time is my thinking.
Well, so it certainly wouldn't hurt. I mean, it would be very helpful, but again, we're at staff right now. Obviously, that would require an increase in FTEs for PSOs. There's no shortage of work for them, that's for sure.
This budget on the PSOs, is that for the 8 that are now
Yes,
hired?
yes, that's for 8. Any further questions on the PSOs? No, okay, LEPF is on page 99. Now, we had talked about that in the split from the last time. Although we haven't received our LEPF funding, but
103?
yeah. Is that for the training that you?
So fund 211, the revenue there, the 97,000 is revenue grant. And then the next page.
It's 105 on red.
I don't see that. Page 105.
It's on a different page.
On the bottom right.
Yeah, funding, because it didn't go up for next year.
Yes, Mayor and Council, every year we submit an application for our Law Enforcement Protection Fund. In previous years, we would get $600 for every officer that we had certified within the department. This year, they increased it to $1,000. And they also have a base amount for the size of our city based on census, and that went up to $45,000. And with the additional $1,000. So all in total, it was close to $57,000.
Everything on here is correct. 97,000, and how we split it is good.
So we have options in regard to how we use our LEPF. We can use it for equipment, or training, or we can allocate it by percentage. So this year we chose to do half and half.
Officers that are SWAT certified, is that part of the training expenses?
In regard to training, it's all inclusive. If we choose to send our officers, whether they're detectives, SWAT officers, patrolmen, it comes out of that fund.
So it could be basically anything for all the sworn officers going to training.
And travel,
So it's not
travel
separated.
expenses.
Yeah, travel training. Any further questions on the LEPF?
Page 107.
the same.
The police run all inclusive under funds to allow their operations. They have two sources of revenue. They have their LEF, which is to the state 97,000. The remaining piece of their operating is funded out of infrastructure tax, which is our fund 311. And they share that burden, but that fund shares the burden of police and fire costs. So it's kind of pretty unique. We pretty much have
Police and fire.
police.
Oh, I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Fire.
That's Joel.
What line item is that, Patty?
So if you back up to page 103, you'll see the transfer comes in. It's listed as an operating grant.
Okay.
It's 905,000 this year. Is their total
Okay.
cost? 361 of it is from. And that here. Part of it could be used for the general operation. Part of it is for street.
Okay, on page 107, everything on there that we asked for an increases is good. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. The only thing that I have that was not changed was our rental account, which is the 4712. And we were granted for 6 loaners, rental cars, rather than 5. So that's the only thing that I saw that was missing, unless there was something else that, a reason why it's not changed. The 4712 account?
We authorized them to have one more leased
Yes.
vehicle. This is for basically undercover, so that they rotate them, I assume, I forget how often. And they needed one additional one. Actually, we really spent a lot of time in the police fleet this time, and kind of got clear that they would have 74 vehicles and 6 leased vehicles. Right, Chief? If I get my numbers right?
I believe it was 73 and 6.
Say what? I'm sorry.
I believe it was 73 and 6.
Oh, I thought it was 74. Okay, well, you probably want me to be right.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, but I think that's, and then they asked for an additional one because how often do they rotate the leased vehicles to change them?
Mayor and Council, we use leased vehicles from Rico Motors only because we do undercover operations with our narcotics unit. And obviously, it goes without saying that if we use the same vehicle every day, it's not quote unquote undercover. But we rotate them based on the circumstances. If we do an operation and basically that vehicle is identified or associated with our narcotics unit, we try and get them changed out with Ricos as often as we can, just to maintain that undercover status. But also depends on the availability of their fleet. So if I had to make an average out of it, it'd be about anywhere from 3 to 6 months to rotate them out.
I'm sorry, it is correct though. I was given the wrong printout. So everything is correct. Yeah. Yeah, I looked at the wrong attachment, I guess. But everything is good.
Any other questions?
I'm just curious how this varies from your previous budgets, like from last year's budget, because I just wasn't here. So I know Patty, I think, gave it to me, but I can't remember.
So if you look on your printout, counselor, the far right.
Oh, yeah, last year's actuals.
You
Yes.
go one last, you just create your justice budget.
And then last year's actuals. Yes, I see. Okay, sorry about
So
that.
now both of those prior years are COVID years, and that's what we prefaced at the beginning, they're a little bit wonky.
Okay.
But then we can only fit so much on a page of mine, so we have to read it.
Yeah, that's true.
When we do the 10-year one, it's gonna be on the page.
Brent's gonna be this.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I hope I can put it up. Okay. Very sort of just-
All right, any other questions for police department?
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, and keep on recruiting. And we probably would need to talk to HR about maybe how we can be a little more creative in trying to get the word out on officer positions. Yeah, because, yeah. Thank you very much. The next one we have is municipal court. And what page is that? Guys?
15 minutes.
Okay, so it is on.
Thank you.
It's not gonna be.
Christine, once you do that, this is a lot of details.
They're gonna pick and be very picky. That's good. It's nice to have a selection.
Training.
That's great.
Go through. Every time we turn around, well, they're not trained right.
We gotta get you trained for the marijuana law.
Hello, everyone.
What page are we on now?
We're on page 81, and I'm going to ask Judge Griego and Aaron to go ahead and just present the highlights of your budget, and then I'm happy to hopefully answer any questions.
Oh, sorry. We're getting there. I'm gonna let Aaron begin, and then I'll chime in when we might have some questions.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We don't really have many changes.
What page are you on?
We're on 81.
81.
Start off talking about your proposed FTE, which is the very first line. Those are the pay changes that you.
Okay, so we came this year with a request for a raise for our judicial aides. They're being paid a significantly lower rate than the magistrates. And what we did was magistrates get paid about 85% of districts. And so we kind of took that same idea into play here. And what we did is when we calculated the way the judicial branch for the state works is their pay is 85% of comp ratio. I'm looking at Fran because I know Fran knows most of
I
it.
was on that study.
Okay. They have in the last few years tried to get them to 100% of comp. I'm not sure if everyone's there, but we, of course, weren't going to ask for 100% of comp, but we thought 85% of comp from what magistrates are making. You're right. Now, I think our district's still getting paid less than magistrates, and of course, municipals would fall a little bit after that. And thinking of the idea of judges' pay and the clerk's pay. And so we thought if we went to the 85%, or I'm sorry, 80%, right? Is it 80? 85% of the comp ratio compared to the magistrates. What we were asking was to move our clerks up from their current pay of, what is this here? $13.48. And this is a judicial aide 2, which is comparable to a judicial specialist 2, which is still a very minimum requirement. 1 year of court experience or something similar. And what we're asking is to bring them up to $14.90. Now, the magistrates in that position are making at 100% $19.40. We're just asking to get our clerks up to $14.90. Which would be a difference of, I think one clerk would be $1.42 difference, and then the other 2, right, would be $1.68 difference.
So judges that, or Aaron, is that the difference is 22,215, that's that figure right there. So that's how much it would cost us in terms of.
Because the other position that we're asking also to be increased would be the Judicial Specialist Supervisor, which is this position here, a Deputy Court Administrator. And our clerk's currently making $18.50. Magistrate's making $24.52, and we're asking to get her to $20.84.
Was that in that original email that you sent to Marla?
Yes.
Then that should be included.
Yeah.
You had sent that over.
So is that included in the 22,000?
The number I got was 56. I don't know if I did.
56,000?
Yeah, the difference. I don't know if I did my math wrong or, so I was just going with what you guys had.
Yeah, okay, so Marla's not here today, unfortunately. She had a medical appointment, so let us check that with her.
Okay.
And we'll, when we bring the preliminary budget to you all on May 10th, any changes we'll present at that time from this.
So as you're talking about doing a salary study, would that include the courts?
It would. It would include all city staff.
I don't know if you want to wait and see what that study discloses. Just saying.
You know, that's kind of a, up to your
Maybe a salary
discretion, your
study.
direction on it. The only risk with adjusting pay rates now for any group or any department or anything is if our study comes up and says, well, really, they should be at this level, but we've already put them at this level, then we're obviously leaving somebody at the newer level. You know, they're going to get the better of either, whether they're already at a level higher than what the study says, or if they need to be bumped up based on the study. But it's definitely your call if you want to address that one now or wait. We're hoping, JM, are we still on track to kind of know by January?
Hopefully, I mean, it's kind of a two-step process.
What, Mr. Mayor, can I address that? There's another issue
Yes.
is the legal issue
Mhm.
of the separation of powers.
Right.
Of that there's case law in New Mexico that says that municipal court is essentially independent, it's another unit than the rest of the city. So if you look at the organizational chart of the city, you've got city council, you've got city attorney, which is its own little unit over here with two people. You've got municipal court over here, and then you've got everything else. And basically what case law says is that the municipal court can determine its own personnel policy and compensation schedules independent of what the rest of the city is doing. Now, just like the judicial branch of the state is subject to whatever money is given to it by the legislature, which in this case is you. So ultimately what it says is that municipal court comes here and asks for a budget, but within that budget, they're free to pretty much determine their personnel policy.
And that historically hasn't happened in the city of Gallup. And so we met on this and tried to come up with what exactly this case said. And I'll get you a copy of it. And I should have before found, I thought for sure you would want to see that. And I didn't do that. This is a case from, I think, like the 70s, maybe late 60s. It's old. It's just not ever really been followed here. And so we're at your mercy. It's basically.
And probably not in a lot.
I think
Because it sounds like
that's absolutely right. I think that it's not happening in a lot of the cities. And so now they're training us on it. And so I had this, quick little training and I thought I knew what I was talking about and I didn't. And I, of course, had to come to Curtis to help me understand it. And so we're asking just to bring these gals up to.
Let me just say that's totally accurate. She totally understood what it meant.
I wanted wanted to just chime in. When I worked for the city of Las Cruces, the municipal judge did bring this up back in the early 2000s. And so I was familiar with the case when the judge brought it to us, and is absolutely right. Then that's why we wanted to just show the proposed increase, just to make sure we got that number right. And then it's totally up to you, but they can allocate them in terms of their classification systems as they see fit. I mean, and obviously when we do the classic comp study, we'll still include you because it might be to your benefit to do that, but it's totally the judge's decision. And it's totally yours as to how much you give them in terms of the budget.
I mean, so this proposed 22,000 includes benefits as well for the position?
No, that figure's wrong. I'm looking at the
They have to-
email now. It should be roughly 75,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, the other piece of that is, and we're still figuring the answer out to this part, is do our employees still fall under the bargaining unit? And so that's, well, we think no. So I think that's got to be addressed in the next meeting with those folks, is I think that our people have to be removed from there.
And
Or-
Marla did mention that
or
she and
another-
Al were.
Or that they
Bargain for themselves, right, right.
Would that make them a different bargaining unit though? That's kind of an interesting, that's a whole other.
A whole other.
And we're aware of that issue, and I don't know, when does the UMW contract come up for negotiations? Next year.
Tomorrow we have a meeting with our union.
Okay,
That's one of the things.
okay, so they're gonna bring that up.
So then when we do this whole, you're proposing a 5% increase with COLA, we don't include the judge's staff? Municipal
they
court
are
is
included.
excluded?
No, they're included. They're included.
So either they are their own entity or they're not. They're part of the city or they're their own little world up there. So we need to make a decision, either they are or they aren't. And if they aren't, then they get to pay whatever they want, but why should they be part of
Both worlds.
the 5%?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And
No
yeah,
offense,
so-
people.
so
No,
right
you're
now,
right.
This is with updating that 75,000. This is updated, or this would include the best of both of those worlds. Would include that change and 5%. Now, the judges pay, I believe you guys.
It's
sent us
mandated
the
by
rate. That's
statute.
set, that's beyond us, and we
Yeah.
don't get to raise it, we don't get to change it, whatever is mandated, that's what we put in, and that's what we honor. But for the staff, you're right, so I would kind of like some direction from you today, not necessarily, you can't do it by vote or anything, but maybe your guidance on which way you want it presented when we come back with the actual proposal to vote on. Do we include them at the new rates?
Because this new
recommended?
rate
Do we-
is considerably higher than a 5%, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know anything about the 5%, so.
Right,
So then,
Apologize.
because we have to contend with the rest of the city employees that are gonna say, okay, if we worked at municipal court, we would be raised $1 and something an hour, and we're only getting 5%.
Now,
We
this is,
have to worry about them too.
This, what she's proposing is much more beneficial to them. The first calculation is it's about 11%.
that includes the 5% or not?
No.
It doesn't. Okay. So this is the judicial aides, and you mentioned, what was it?
And her, the deputy court administrator.
Okay, this is,
So you've got 4 employees. No, you have 5 employees that would be.
Four.
Just the 4 aides. I'm
Not
not
Aaron's.
included.
Okay. So
And what would
so
the
four.
new rate for the deputy court administrator be?
1850. Oh, I'm sorry, requesting 2084. She's at 1850 currently.
so did maybe, Judge, you could kind of make your case for why that's the case, because you're asking them to.
Sure. Well, I think it really comes down to the workload that they have, which is huge. And especially my judicial aides, they're barely making a living wage. I think that I'm also not getting a good pool of folks with the offer. When I'm offering 1348, I'm getting very beginning level people who then don't even pass the initial cities.
But what does the job description call for?
Well, we're
High school
changing that
diploma?
also.
Because
Right, we've used the magistrate's same job description and requirements. We're using exactly what they're using,
And it is a high school diploma.
high school
that
diploma,
asks for.
and preferably a year of some experience. And I think we are going to change. Now we have an open position, so what we're taking out is Before it was just asking for a court experience. And the magistrates include some language that says, or banking or other things. So it sort of opens that door a little bit more.
Judge, I totally support this amount that the judicial aids are, you're asking for the deputy. I worked there for 14 years.
Yes,
Started at $8 an hour.
right.
I remember as a single mother with 2 kids, and I had to apply for welfare while I worked for the city of Dallas.
I have all single mothers working with me.
And the reason I say that is because, and also it's illegal. You're working in the legal department. When we were working, and I kept going to my boss, the attorney at that time, and I said, we are under the cities, they have the secretary 5, whatever. We were based under that. And we kept saying, we're not under that. It's legal. We're doing legal
Yeah.
things that the regular secretaries are not, and the receptionists, we were under receptionists. So the jobs that the judicial aide does and the deputy does, they deserve that and more.
And I
they should be comparable
appreciate,
to magistrate, like you said, in district court.
I appreciate that. It's a higher stress level job, right? You're shooting out these judgments that are sending people to jail. This is, it's more serious than sending out a bad email or, spelling the memo wrong or getting some misspelling than that. We're dealing with people's lives. And then, of course, just the interaction every day. We're not dealing with the easy folks. At the window, my gals are getting out. Fran knows this. You're in a very high stress level situation. These folks are dealing with the worst times of their lives. Maybe they're just gotten out of jail or they're facing jail. They're not exactly the friendliest and most polite people to work with. So I think the stress level in its own, we're dealing with, of course, the police on a daily basis. So their stress levels are pretty high too. They're not always the most friendly people to come in and, fix their citations or ask for something from them. It's, and I agree. It's just not a living wage for these folks.
Not for what they do. Absolutely right.
Judge, I'm not in the legal field, but I can appreciate for sure, like increasing these rates. I don't really have a problem with that. I guess my question is, you said maybe you guys were going to look at the requirements. Is that possible? My concern, I want to say this in a nice way, is like, if, like what Councilor Palajic said too, like if we're increasing other positions 5% and these are more, and then, but the minimum requirement is high school diploma, can there be something in a new job requirement that if we increase these wages, it says something of like, I'm not saying that everyone has to have a degree, but some sort of like, or equivalent of X amount of experience, because
Legal experience.
legal experience, because then if you're just saying you have a high school diploma, yes, guaranteed they're having a very stressful job, but then, who's to say that another department in the city isn't having a very stressful job? And so then I can see your point where we just will get questions of like, well, why we also have a stressful job in our department and we're only being increased 5%. That's just the reality. So, but that's not to say I don't think that they deserve it. I do. That's just thinking through.
I think we initially had those concerns also. And it was a little bit more that Aaron and I didn't really know the HR policies. And so we ended up with a couple of positions filled internally that that didn't meet those minimum requirements, right? So we ended up with some folks from the library who didn't have any legal experience. And so now we're 8-9 months in and we're still working on training them. And so, those folks from the city had a better chance to we were supposed to look at them first. I guess we are learning. And the truth is we probably should have went outside of the city to find folks who really had the experience. Because like I said, we're 8-9 months in and we're still training these ladies.
Yeah.
But at 1348, you weren't going to get anybody with more experience.
Exactly.
Right.
And we had that come up. We had a couple of people who were interested from, local law firms or the other courts, and we just don't compete with them.
Yeah, we never saw anybody transfer from magistrate to municipal or district to municipal. They all came out of municipal court. They came to district, they went to magistrate.
Right.
That is so true.
And we got some good folks from there. We really did. I still have Sarah Peretti. Well, I had her at the public defender. She was there for years. I got some good people from municipal court.
Yeah.
But Fran's right. Nobody ever went from district or magistrate down. It just, no.
Oh, yeah. Is that just because, I'm sorry, my ignorance, I don't know, but is the reason the district and magistrate is because that's more through state funding? Is that why they get so much more?
Right.
Okay.
There's state.
And they, in fairness, I'm gonna say district has to do a multitude of different kinds of cases. So you have
Right.
to know domestic relations, domestic violence, civil, criminal,
Probate.
probate. I mean, there's just a slew of stuff you have to know from the
Right.
beginning to the end, and it's a big deal.
Right.
So you have to have a lot of knowledge to work at the court, at the district court. And magistrate, it's the same pretty much, I mean, not the same, they have civil, they have
Yeah.
other cases too, but. So I think, okay, so I'm gonna say, I think that the new rates are okay, but I don't think they should participate with other COLAs with the city. That's my opinion. That's just how I feel.
We'll give you those choices numbers and preliminary.
Okay.
Well, that was our big ticket item. I was like, well, that was it.
The only other thing, did you want to mention revenues? I don't know if we just-
No.
I think I would, yeah, I had a question about how
Okay.
come our fines and fees are so low?
Well, our traffics are extremely down. I think Chief would have.
All the way back to page 1, everybody, to the very bottom is where their revenues.
Oh, geez.
So,
Court fines, bench warrant fee, and then there's one at the top of the next page. DWR.
Oh, I was on the right page. Okay.
Yeah.
so what I'll see, when we did a comparison to just talking about traffic citations, which is a good, moneymaker for us. That's the wrong language to use from a judge. And there were almost 200 less traffic citations issued from the last fiscal to this. And so that's, of course, going to correlate with money coming in. If they're not getting cited, people aren't coming in to pay. And so they're significantly lower.
And how many of those, how many people that are supposed to be paying are in arrears?
Oh, a ton. And we are tons. And I'm talking cases from the 80s and 90s. And we are currently working, we got with the Grants Municipal Judge, and she's using a debt collector, and that we're going to start
Looking into.
following that
trying
also.
to do something.
So are they put on, how long do they have to pay? 6 months?
So it depends, of course, what it is. If I give it deferred, I decide based on what the charge is. If it's a driving or if it's a speeding, average 60 days deferred. Now, I will not allow you the deferred if you're not paid up. So in correlation with that deferred sentence, I make their payment date the same time as the end of the deferred. So when you come in and we're running to see if you've got a new citation, I'm also making sure you paid. If you haven't paid, you lose the benefit of getting the deferred. I'm also not using deferreds a whole lot because it's also so just speak of a speeding citation. It goes from $98 down to $33 on the deferred. So although I'm not supposed to keep in my mind that, it's making the court less money. After this last little hearing we had, guys, I definitely didn't sleep. I was like, Erin, I'm just not going to do deferreds anymore. But deferreds are a good deterrent for people to not get a new citation because, that's the idea of it. And so I'm keeping that in mind, but I have kept the deferred payment dates the same. So a lot of these non-payments are old stuff also. We're trying to stay on top of it a little bit more, Fran, we really are. But there's just some of those folks who just aren't going to pay. Now, the result of that, of course, is a bench warrant. Now, is that feasible for our city? For me to issue a bench warrant on a $68 citation where then an officer is arresting, the jail's putting them in jail. Now my clerks are setting it. We have a whole new court date. Officer has to come to court.
$100 warrant?
So that was another thing that wasn't happening until now. The $100 bench warrant fee had historically not been getting tacked on. There had been a city ordinance in place for a while, way before us. And so we are now, and then the idea was we can only give them $100 fee. I said, that's not what the ordinance says. It says per bench warrant. If I'm issuing 3 bench warrants, there's $300 a bench warrant fee that are getting tacked on. So I am collecting on the bench warrant fees. The other thing I am doing, and it's not it's not an idea that a lot of people like is I offer, if I have these folks who have already been booked in multiple times on a failure to pay bench warrant, my last resort is you're staying in jail. Now, I don't want to make it a debtor's prison. It's never been a good idea. It's just not a good idea for our community or a poor community. But if I've already offered them community service, payment plans at $1 a month, well, I mean, we could do many, many ideas with them. If still 3 or 4 arrests later, they're still not complying, then I'm keeping them in jail and they're earning that credit per day.
That's okay.
Now, it's not the best, it's not a popular idea, right?
That's hard.
But I think that you have to show the people that
If you
when
don't,
we issue you a fine or a fee, you
Yes.
gotta pay it.
yes.
I'm sorry, you gotta pay it.
And you know, they always have the option to do community service. So I am, you know, I'm sensitive to those folks who don't have the money,
But they could.
but they
can.
absolutely
Take
they
them over
can.
there.
And you know, with working with Mariano, it became a lot easier to get people to community service. So these barriers that they were having before, you know, so someone want to take me on the weekend, and community punch only wants me on Tuesdays. Well, that's not the case over at the sheriff's department. I'm sending them over there. He'll take them any day of the week and schedule it. And so when these folks still are not taking those steps to get that done, well, then they're going to jail. And I've been told I've used it a lot more than anyone else. And so I've been told I'm the nicest and meanest judge that they've dealt with in the same sentence. And sometimes I'm not sure that's good, but you know, jail is an option for me and I'm using it.
Okay.
Yes. Well, especially after I knew that the city wasn't being charged per inmate, because I'll tell you, my first year I was scared of coming in front of y'all. I was like, ooh, because the jail kept telling me you're using us a lot, you know, and I don't know if I ever shared this, but Anthony Demas actually requested a meeting with me and said I was using the jail too much. And I let him finish. And at the end of it, I said, oh, is it my turn to speak? And he said, yes. And I said, I don't care.
Good for you.
I don't care. That's my job is to protect the city and the city of Gallup residents or who vote me in. I don't care.
Well, we
My
pay
counsel said
30% of the,
exactly what.
we pay 30% whether you're there.
Well,
or
I
not.
went armed with that information, which I didn't know before. And so that ended up real quick. That conversation ended and that was it.
I think it's great. I've heard really good things with the sheriff's department. I don't know if that's something we probably don't have the budget for to implement sometime with the city. I know we have limited budget and personnel, but that'd be great because I like the community service because the reality is that some people don't have the money. But I agree with Randy, you gotta pay and you shouldn't be continue. And it's hard. I imagine it's very hard to get like a warrant or go arrest someone when they're like, oh, less than $100, but then they just keep committing crime. So it's like, what is the solution? But I like the community service and I've seen lots of pictures on the McKinley Sheriff's Office Facebook of the various, and I know
Right.
he's told me himself that, you know, you sent a lot of people, which I think is great. So.
Okay,
All right. Okay.
thank you.
Much, Judge and Aaron.
you,
Appreciate it.
everyone.
Good job.
Appreciate you, Mayor
And
and Council. Thank
and
you.
the budget, preliminary budget will be on the May 10th agenda.
Okay.
So if you'd like to be there, that'd be great.
I will be at a training, but
Okay,
Aaron will
Aaron,
be
you
there.
know. Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Just thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, so we are going to move to a lot of the administrative departments. Who do you want to go first? Finance is off to the left. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, I can, if we have any, I can just go whatever gaps we have, or I can start it off.
Well, we've got finance, human resources, city attorney, city
Attorney
clerk.
says
he's ready.
Well, I thought I was next on.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Maybe there's been a revised agenda.
Nope, you're good.
No,
You
we
can go.
just, yeah, go ahead.
So the city attorney's revenue line is not there, I'm joking. He's one of the early departments, though. He's on page 10 on your prints.
Legal, yeah, he's right.
Looking for yours, your 101, there you go. And then the second page is your detail.
Ready? So our big ticket item is obviously professional services. And if you look historically, the last about 3 years, 2 or 3 years, we have had probably $20,000, $30,000 underspent that. The problem is that we need a fudge factor in there because every now and again you have a City of Gallup versus Hart pop up that costs us, you know,
$100,000.
over $100,000 in external legal fees. And so, you know, I build in a fudge factor for those kinds of cases that are unexpected, but it's never going to cover a big case like that. It could cover 1 or 2 smaller cases, but that's the unpredictable factor of the professional services. The other parts of professional services tend to be pretty flat as far as, you know, we pay Mason and Isaacson for all of our traffic prosecutions.
Yeah, the details on page 11.
In municipal court, and that's been running pretty consistently at just under 100,000. Advocate law, again, their bill has been pretty consistent. We had a real dip that COVID year because, you know, basically court was shut down almost. And so there was just nothing being, very little was being processed through municipal court. But other than that, those numbers are pretty flat historically. Some of the other fees, you know, there's a little bit of fluctuation, but they're not big enough to matter. Typically, you know, I've put in there 20,000 for Lynn Isaacson for just my overflow stuff. And so a lot of pretty much anything that's HR related, employment related that I used to want to review first before it went to Lynn, I'm just saying, send it over there. I'm swamped with what I've got to do. And so Lynn's pretty much doing anything employment law related, and that's covered within that 20,000.
So I apologize, City Attorney. So we pay Mason and Isaacson $100,000 for municipal court?
For a prosecutor, for being the city attorney, basically, in municipal court. And, you know, I was a prosecutor for 10 years. I would love to be doing those cases because I love being a litigator, but there's just no time unless we had a second position.
But there, historically, we've always contracted that position out, both the prosecutor and the public defender.
Okay.
Yeah. A public defender has to be prosecuted out, or prosecuted out, had to, you know, contract out because unless we set up an independent public defender department, you can't have that person working for the city. But it really goes back to who has been the city attorney. If you look at who's been the city attorney, they've been primarily non-litigators. Right? And so that's why the litigation function has generally been contracted out. You know, George could try a case, but it was not his strength. You know, his strength was in other areas, property transactions, and things like that.
That's just what she said.
Yeah. And honestly, you know, I've had to go back through, I've learned a lot looking at his files and calling him about property law. That's not my strength. So, compliance services, is this, I thought we were looking at transferring that to municipal court.
The 20,000.
Am I in the wrong?
Because I thought
line here.
McKinney County didn't have that.
Yeah, if you look at the notes, we reduced it by 20,000.
That's what I thought I'd seen.
20,000 and then see how it's deducted right here.
Okay,
For
okay,
BC here.
I don't think we
removed it,
remembered
and it's
Okay.
added to municipal.
okay. I thought I'd
was
seen
an email.
a version of this that had the 20,000 taken out, but then here it pops up with it. But that just makes more sense. I don't know what historically the reason was that that contract was being paid out of my office. It's providing services, not for my office, but for municipal court. And we just didn't have the ability to monitor it. And unfortunately, what we discovered was that, and municipal court staff, and there's just been a huge change in the efficiency of how that, how the municipal court functions since Judge Griego came in. And I was a little worried about her background in the public defender. But she has really made that unit so much more efficient. And one of the things they discovered was that, and this was just their initiative of looking at what is city attorney's office being billed for as far as people on probation, and are these people actually on probation? And they discovered county was billing us for folks that had bench warrants out for them, and it wasn't a lot of money, but it was sloppy. And we don't have the records to be able to double check what the invoices are. They do. So that just made sense to switch that 20,000 over to municipal court's budget. Other big change, we're actually saving a bunch of money on, we switched services from Westlaw to Nexus Lexus, and we're saving a ton of money. I'd rather have Westlaw, but LexisNexis just made us an offer that was so much cheaper than what we had been paying. That's really nothing significantly changing in this budget. So stand for questions.
I apologize for my ignorance, but what is LexisNexis? I don't know what.
Well, there's two primary services that lawyers use for doing legal research.
Okay.
And so you pay different rates for what you have access to. And we were paying for $400 a month to Westlaw, that I still have professor credentials at Western New Mexico University. I had access to more materials there than I did for what we were paying for. And so LexisNexis is the other service, and they are charging us a little over $100 a month for access to more materials. I get all the states and their cases and their statutes, not just New Mexico. I don't like their interface, but 75% reduction in cost for a better product is hard to say no to.
And then again, sorry for my ignorance on this, but Curtis, so your job is to mostly, because I'm just curious about, so you don't ever do like any of the, because we're paying for the defense and the prosecution side, so you're never really handling any of that, or do you ever step in with that?
The cases that I've kept are the code cases.
The code cases.
The code enforcement cases I've kept, and I really have been looking at, do I even have time for those anymore? But I kept the code cases. They're a lot more complicated than your traffic cases. And there's just more interaction before the case is filed. And so I've kept those. But other than that, I'm not prosecuting anything. Sue people occasionally, for when we have liens that reach a certain amount, we'll sue them if we think we have the ability to actually collect. Someone who has a job that we can garnish their wages, but we don't do that a lot.
So what do you do since you're always so busy?
That's what I was going to say.
Well, the problem is that How many departments do we have?
I think we have 18 to 20.
So technically, you're my boss. And who I report to is council and the mayor. I would say that, and this is just kind of guessing, 20% of my time is actually spent on work for you guys. 80% is spent on requests from all the departments. Right now, Navajo Gallup's taking a little bit of time. Property acquisitions, taking some time as far as drafting agreements and that sort of thing. But a lot of it is things that individually might take 1 or 2 hours or 30 minutes, but there's just dozens upon dozens of them.
Contracts, MOUs,
Yeah,
legal
it's just a
questions.
lot of-
And the other thing that George really hit on, the previous city attorney, was the airport. And Curtis inherited a lot of that too. So hopefully we're going to try to transition some of that out of his office. But he's constantly busy with just process MOUs, contracts, reviewing documents. We are so busy with new grant programs, new money coming in, new agreements, new sub-agreements. He can't keep up. It's just, in fact, I'm hoping he will get rid of the code enforcement cases so he can give us full time.
And you're seeing that effect throughout the city. I mean, you're seeing, the city manager's office is much busier. CD's way busier, I think, than you've ever been as far as. Well, it appears to me that a lot more is coming through their office than has ever come in, particularly with, the capital stuff. But all these grant applications that are coming through just eat up a lot of people's time. Finance certainly is a lot of time is devoted to all these grants that we're getting, that the multitude of grants that we get that we didn't get before. And sometimes, they're for things that we didn't ask for, but we're still processing the applications and the administration of those grants.
Curtis, do you, sorry, I don't know, it was clarity. Do you look over grant applications for legal or not really?
It depends. Most of that, well, I don't know. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It just depends on if there's, certainly if there's an application and then there's an award, then I'll be looking at the award contract. But it just depends.
So if the council has if I murder someone, can I come to you? I'm just kidding. It's off the record.
If they say that, I didn't hear that.
If the council has a legal question, we can come to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was joking about
You
that.
are, yeah, you are my boss. And so basically, the time that the 80% of my time that goes to city staff is really at your discretion to allow that. But if I was it'd be a great job if I only had to answer to council if I tell CD.
I usually ask him a lot of, I want to donate this money. I want to do something with my discretionary funds. Is it anti-donation? How can I do this? And sometimes he'll say, no, you can't do that.
Or hopefully we come up with a way to legally do it.
Different way. Yeah, but
For ordinances, some of the things that have come, the council or individual councilors will have ideas about new ordinances that we might adopt or changes to existing ordinances, that sort of thing. And that's and anything where it's really an ordinance change, that's work I'm doing for you. Resolutions and that.
Okay. Any questions for Curtis? And you review every agenda item that comes through.
To varying degrees of for the word, but thoroughness. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. So if there's no more questions for Curtis, I'm going to go ahead. We have all the administrative departments to get through. So I'm going to just ask finance to go next, and then just so everyone knows, and then human resources and city clerk, since we're doing both of them. Okay.
Okay, so finance is 101, 1015. It's on page 15. And we have no staffing changes. I do have a little bit of OT in there because when the auditors come or when we're doing year end, sometimes some of my staff end up, especially during holidays, my payroll girl ends up working the weekend just to get paychecks out for the way. So we do utilize a little bit of overtime. We try to keep it minimal. My biggest groups of travel in here that you'll see have changed over the last couple of years or expenditures is travel. I've got that one back up to full funding. Now that the world is starting to open back up, my conferences are now live. And the one I go to this summer, they aren't even going to offer an online option. And that's the GFOA, which is one of the biggest ones I go to that I really get the most data from. So I do have money in there for that. Some of our trips to Albuquerque, state auditor updates, some of the smaller ones, usually up to 3 of us in the department go. Professional services, that line is primarily the annual audit, as well as all the different compliance that we have to do for bond reporting. We have to file with the IRS every 5 years. We have to file with Emma online every single year when the audit's complete. So I have different agencies that help with all of that. The big change this year is going to be under the 4590 other services. I do have my debt book, which is my GASB 87 compliance in there for continued renewal on that one. And that's for, there's new reporting starting with the current year on all our leases. And JR has been working hard to get that implemented with the use of this software. The next one that we want to implement is a budget software. And it's a big item, but one of the things we found is even though Naviline has budget software and we're utilizing it, it is not dynamic enough for what you want and what we need to be able to present it to. To do a real and honest, good 10-year plan with the CIP, we need software that allows that, that tracks us, that has living dynamic documents. Not that we recreate from scratch once a year, every year, that are so labor intensive. We've got staff working nights and weekends to get it all done. The most budgeting software, like right now, if you wanted me to go back and rework the payroll and say, well, let's try 6%, then I'd be all over that. But it does take me several hours to go back and make that change and to redo it and to re-add it into the budget. With the budgeting software, you're able to pretty much do it on the fly. Maybe not literally up to date that second, but within minutes, most of them are promising that we would be able to do those kind of what ifs, different scenarios. We could try different things to see what the actual costs are in budget, only for what we need to, not the full, you know, if we wanted to implement it 3/4 of the year in or whatever. So they do give us a lot of leeway there. That I think our CIP will be more, I almost said more better.
More better?
It'll be more comprehensive, because one of the things we do now is we recreate it and we're trying to get them, okay, what did you want last year? Where are you at with last year's stuff? Now let's add your current priorities. And there's always all these discrepancies, or they name it differently. So we think it's a new project, not in addition to the existing. These softwares will have a living dynamic group of information. So when you go end up at your project and say, well, now my new year projections, this, that, and the other, it's already there. You just update your numbers or you change your priorities on it. So other than that, most of my budget's pretty straightforward, pretty standard. We are getting hit with a lot more compliance. And we keep seeing new things come up in here that we have to participate in to make sure we can be compliant with whatever they go at us.
What are you guys currently using for your budget software, and what are you planning to, or what are you hoping to move to?
So right now we're using the module out of Naviline, which is our full ERP. It does everything. And it's decent. It's gotten us from doing things manually with spreadsheets to where it is in the system. There's a lot of automation to it. I'm looking at different demos right now. I'll have about 5 different ones over by the next month or so is up. And then I'm going to take the top 3 back to the budget committee, and even a little bit of expanded, like some of CB staff that did all the legwork on the CIP. And then we as a team will evaluate and bring forward what we want to recommend. And they all have their pros and cons. The prices vary in range. This is the high end of anything I've been able to find, so that we don't have to worry about that component of it, but we do not know what company it is that's going to be selected.
So this would be the 116,500. That's what that.
That 110 of it is the budget. And the one software that I got that amount from, about half of that is a one-time upfront cost, and then you have an annual subscription. So the implementation, we're shooting to do an implementation from July to December during that time frame, during audit. Get it in there, get it trained, get us to where we understand it, get all the basics set up, and then we can start doing it live in January when we start the real budget for the next year.
And you'll bring
We do 1025 a year.
that after I do mine. Yeah.
We'll bring the various options to council, is that right? Or how does that work? I'm not really.
It depends on the cost of it, and whether we need to bring bring it forward. If any of you want to participate in seeing it, seeing the reports, we could definitely include you in the selection. But usually if once it's in the budget, if the contract is going to be under 50,000, then we just take care of it administratively and you just get the work product from there. And I'm hoping to hit that under 50. I don't know yet. That's my pipe dream.
Okay. This is the council's financial policy is that anything over 50,000, any contracts over 50,000 have to be brought to council for approval. Of course, if it's not budgeted, then any amount would have to come to you for a budget adjustment. Any other questions for Patty? If not, then let's go on to HR. And then after HR, we'll do the city clerk since Al is juggling both.
HR, we'll be on page 21.
21, sorry.
Page 21.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Afternoon.
HR department has 4 FTEs. Unfortunately, we're down to an HR director and a human resources technician. Pretty much in our budget's pretty flat, but we did add a couple of line items, money to a couple of line items in our proposal. One is our travel line item in the amount of $2,000, and also in our employee training for $2,000 as well. There are some public employer relations conferences, assurance conferences that we would like to attend. So we've included that in our budget proposal. One thing to note also is in our other services line item 4590, we have built in an amount of $13,500 for an employee recognition event at the end of this year. So we want to do something for our employees at the end of the year, recognize them for the hard work that they've done, and have a celebration around Christmas time. So other than that, we're pretty much flat, and I'll stand for any questions.
What line item is the employee recognition event out of?
That would come out of other services, 4590.
I'm not looking at the right page, thank you. I was like, I don't see that. I just, is I guess more of a housekeeping question. I think it was brought up at a council meeting that we're struggling with finding, or we were struggling with finding a solidified HR director. And then, so they were looking to hire another position that was not a director position. And so have we found anyone for that other position? And then are you the interim HR director for life, or how does that work? I'm just curious.
That's the trend that we're going through right now. It's so hard to hire people during this time. We're not only suffering that in HR, but also in other departments as well. And that's the norm nationwide. But we are we'll look at what we've done and what we can do as far as getting the word out there to advertise and try to generate some interest in our HR positions and also other city positions as well.
But our goal is still to try to hire an HR director.
Absolutely. I mean, we came close. We had 2 good applicants and we have offered the job, and then we were struggling along for a really long time. And then the person at the last minute changed his mind. He was very qualified. Both of them were. the other one is probably not suitable. So we're hopeful, but I think we're going to try to advertise in Municipal League and some other places that we haven't done yet.
Okay, no further questions. We can move on. Sure, the city clerk's budget, we're on page 25. Total FTEs are 3 FTEs. We are fully staffed. Proud to say. We've also included in our budget proposal funds for in our travel line item and also our employee training line item as well. There are numerous courses that we attend and maintain our municipal clerk certifications with the Municipal League and the Municipal Clerks Association. So we've added $2,500 to our travel line item and employee training in the amount of $1,200. The city clerk's budget is like a roller coaster from year to year. This is our low time where we're not having to budget for an election, but come fiscal year 23, we may need to budget for an election for 2024. One of the things that you may consider and we may want to discuss at this time is the possibility of opting into the Local Election Act. That would remove the need to budget for running an election. We have to budget every 2 years about $60,000 to run an initial election and also a runoff election if one is needed. There are pros and cons for opting in. The pros would be that by statute, there's an election fund that's created in which the county clerks would run the election and then be reimbursed by the state election fund to do the elections. The elections would be conducted on the first Tuesday in November of odd number years. The only drawback, it would take away 4 months of your terms. So instead of your terms ending on April 1st of 2024, there would be 3 of you whose terms would end December 31st of 2023. So the pros, initially we thought that we would have the control of doing more control of maintaining our own elections, but we're not really seeing that. A good example is, under the old municipal election laws, we were able to do our own canvassing of our election results. Under the Local Election Act, we no longer do that. It's all done by the Board of County Commissioners. And then there's also, we have the control with our poll officials, with setting our polling locations, early voting, but we really don't have full control of our elections at all. So it's either in the hands of the Secretary of State's office and complying with their requirements, or with working with our county Bureau of Elections. And so one of the things that we may consider at this time next year is looking at opting in. If you were to do that, you would have to adopt an ordinance by, I believe, is June of 2023. So a way to save $60,000 a year. Other than that, if you would prefer to have the clerk's office, the city clerk's office, continue to maintain the elections, we'd be happy to do that also. So thank you for your consideration, and I'll stand for any questions.
With the opting in, is that something if that was the ordinance, is the county okay with that? Or, does the Bureau of Elections?
I believe all counties are on board for having municipalities opt in. And I know I've even had county commissioners, kind of give me the idea, you guys should opt in because you wouldn't have to have special meetings to certify an election. And then it would, make things easier on their end as well.
It caught them by surprise that they had to canvass our election and have a special meeting. So that kind of brought the issue up again.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of opting in. I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels. I know it would cut terms short, but I see both sides, right? But I think the benefit too is, and I think I talked with you about this, is for one, with me being a brand new counselor, it's like, as it stands now with the elections, and I'm sure when all of you are brand new, it's like you're brand new and then you're thrown into the busiest month of the entire year and you're so new trying to figure everything out. And so that can be a little bit overwhelming, I think. But on the plus side too, when it's only two people running or two districts running, then, I think you'd be in line with the state, right? Like, so position, or you'd be in line with other elected.
With other elections, the school board, there's also water conservancy districts and other entities that have their elections under the regular local election in November.
So the hope is that maybe if we opted in, more people would get out to vote, I guess is my hope. I don't know that would be true for sure, but maybe you're saying no, I think maybe not.
That
but-
was the intent of the new law, was to increase, they thought more people would vote, especially school board elections, because those are like the lowest
Our
turnout.
city is getting awfully low. too.
The city's getting low too. So, and we kind of thought we would have more control when we voted yes to opt out, that we would run our own elections, we would canvass our own, we thought we would have full control. And now we learned that we don't. And so it's, why do it if they're doing all
For
the
the
other
school boards, it didn't increase anybody voting. They were down.
So Al, just, you said that they have to make a decision by, what was that again?
By June of
Okay,
2023.
so probably need to have a work session on that in the spring to just kind of talk about the options, especially before the next budget. So, but thank you for presenting that option, because I know it's been challenging.
So then the next election would be this December, wouldn't it, or November?
Next
No,
November.
next year.
Next year.
November 2023, it would be
Take
your
office.
position,
So
council.
do they have election every year or every 2 years?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. And this is election this year, so the next one will be 2 years from now.
Right.
Well,
The
it
regular
normally
local
was.
election runs in odd number years. The general elections run in even numbered years. I get that right? Yes.
The November election is this November is a general election.
Right.
So 2 years from this November,
From November.
right? No.
It'd be next November 2023 would
Okay,
be the regular
23,
local.
so odd years.
election.
Okay.
Instead of March 2024.
24.
So we would say it would just be a little bit early, be a couple months early essentially. And then we would save the 60,000 and potentially save a runoff election funding as well, right? If there was a runoff.
Yeah, all that's in the $60,000 amount.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
included. Okay.
So something to think about from here until next year. So,
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Al. Next, we're going to go to purchasing and warehouse, and that is